how are we to understand what relational means? And the problem is that for me, we come at the very idea of relationship in terms of individual units. That is what we have. A relationship is formed when two people come together, that is individual, independent units. Well, I'm trying to get away from that idea. Now, let me try to give you a shortcut of understanding that if you look at what I'm saying now, all the words, I didn't invent them. They're not coming out of my brain. They're coming out of dialogues of which I've been a part. And nobody else invented them either. All those words were invented with us together, moving together, what I call coordinating around the use of syllables, for example. We coordinate and we create language. You couldn't create that language. I couldn't create that language. In fact, it isn't a language until there is a we. Now, think about this. So all my words are coming out of that process of the we. Well, so is that gesture. Because I didn't make that up. I mean, you recognize that gesture, of course, because it comes out also from relationships, out of which we made that gesture meaningful and acceptable. What about my clothing? All right, so I didn't create these styles. I mean, whatever we're wearing or not wearing also comes out of that process. Now, when you push it very far, keep pushing it, and ask yourself, what do you do in the world that doesn't come out of that coordinated process? Like, breathe. I mean, you would breathe alone, maybe. But virtually everything we do and say and what counts for us, what's important, what's interesting, is coming out of that coordinated process. So it's that process, that coordination, out of which everything comes that we hold valuable in a given day or in a lifetime. So it's not a me and you. It's the coordination. It's the me you, and it's in that coordination things count. I mean, for example, I can't talk to you unless you accept the words as being something. And as you can question them, you could take my words and say, well, I don't believe that. I reject that, or that's ridiculous. I mean, so they're not anything until you do something with them. So it's that trying to point to that the process of coordination, and that's the genesis of virtually everything everything we do. So how do you save? How do you value? How do you pay attention to that process of coordination? Yeah, where is there shift towards a relational perspective? Again, I don't think that shift is sort of immediate and full. I think you move in slowly, trying to grasp what it would mean, what it would be in practice, and so on. And I could name a whole series of areas in which that movement has taken place. For example, in organizations. I mean, our traditional idea of the organization was pretty much laid out as a machine. That is, that there were everybody had their own independent role to play. We're trained to do that. We're hired and fired to do that role. And now you've slowly moved to a conception of the organization as a culture, and now in terms of the conversations that are, or the organization is making meaning, or a collaborative organization. So if you pick up books on organization today, you'll see a whole lot of books on collaboration, how we collaborate in this organization, how do we work as teams. Fascinating. In the military even, there's a book called The Team of Teams, and moving away from the whole idea of military, top-down control. Everybody gets controlled in turn, but looking at people as coordinating locally, knowing what the situation is, working together, and command now becomes coordinating the coordinations. That's a new kind of role. I mean, that's really interesting. All right, there are a couple. So organization therapy has tended to move that way. Not all at once, and there's certainly a lot, but the movement toward meaning-making in therapy. co-creating narratives, for example, co-creating the meaning in conversation of your life. I mean, that's become a really important thread within the therapeutic community. Peace building, it's been there for a long time. I look at something like appreciative inquiry and the way in which that's moved across dimensions, peace building being only one of them, how we together can share stories and build on those stories and build the future out of that. It's all about the we-ness of one of the most inspiring movements I've been a part of lately. It's called Relational Welfare, and it's trying to say, how can we look at government not in terms of making laws and policies and so on and enforcing them, but working with people to co-create things. That we're going to decide what you're going to do, but, you know, is it possible we should be doing this? And can we work together to do that? Not making policies, for example, for, let's say, social media, but working with social media to say, what would be the optimal policies given a whole lot of stakeholders in this? If we're going to have a welfare program, for example, with recipients, not making a whole lot of rules about when and where and how you can get welfare. And I talked to a woman the other day, and she said, you know, welfare for me means going in and filling out a whole lot of forms, giving reports all the time, and people telling me what I can and can't do. And I'm smothered by it. Now there's a whole movement in England, and it's also in Denmark, saying, look, let's not tell people what they can and can't do to survive. Let's work with them. We have some resources, we have some money, we have some wisdom. They have some wisdom about the world they live in. How can we work together to make it viable for them? Whole new way of thinking about it, and I love it. I mean, it's like, you could change government. I mean, if you begin to think now about the schisms in government today, particularly in the United States, but it's sweeping Europe as well, where people pretty much defend their parties. I mean, the government is about doing what your party wants to do to stay in power. It's not about the common good. How can we restore a sense of we? It's not you versus me. It's, look, we've got a world we're part of. Not only you and me and across the aisle, but we across the aisle and the rest of the country. We're in it together. So, I mean, again, it's idealistic, but I think that whole way of thinking about government, if that could be developed further, it could have just a major impact on the future of our country and the world.